Hey guys! So in this video we are going to touch a little bit on a practice that I like, and today I actually had a concrete example of when I was very happy that I followed this practice. So let's get into it. Now, what's the practice that I'm talking about? Well, I'm talking about defensive programming. What do I mean by defensive programming? Well, more specifically, I talk about I like to call it defensive programming in JavaScript, where let me just define it. So I made a video or two about how I think about writing what I call robust JavaScript. And you see, one of the core issues of JavaScript is that you simply can't trust that you're getting the right type of data. Since it's a loosely typed language, and since there's so many things that could change in the model that is incoming to your application, you can go one of two routes in general. You can do what most people do, and that is to simply assume that the shape of the data is correct. In other words, when a function gets a value, you assume that you can trust whatever is coming in. Now, the problem with that is, as I've argued to a lot of the people I talk to, is that in order for that to work, you can at no point look from you can never look from the perspective of the function. You always have to understand the whole execution of the program, because that's the only way, or rather, you have to know what the start data is in every execution. If you don't know that ahead of time, you have no idea of, you have to log things out and figure out what the shape of the data is. And what's even worse is that you need to understand the semantics of the data, because what happens if you, for some reason, you have and I've been here. I've been in situations where the system was literally so large and so complicated that there was no way for me to figure out how all of the parts fit together. And when I was adding my own functionality, all I could really do in that scenario was to write some logic and some functions and simply log out what the data was at that point in execution, and cross my fingers that I understood how it was intended to be used. Because if it changed, my code would break. So by doing that enough and messing up enough and having basically tons of bugs and so forth due to basically the data shape changing, I adopted this practice of what I call defensive programming, which basically is that I will always write something, a piece of logic, either like an object or something that takes in the value that I'm looking for, and simply does a safe index into the object or the value that I'm trying to extract. Load-get function is probably my favorite function for this. And so I've been applying that rule for the most part, for the good part of a year roughly. And today I had my first real concrete example of when this has saved my ass. So I was working on a story, and basically I had fixed an issue for the administrative panel for my coworkers that work in the support department. And the bug was very simple. The data model had simply changed on the server. One of my other coworkers had been working, and he had forgotten to update the client side, like the JavaScript that shows the administrative panel to my coworkers, in the support department, right? And so I was about basically just there to fix it. So I updated the model so that it sent the correct data, and then I had a branch where I had the front-end code that now was changed to account for that. And something just went wrong. It just kind of we have two separate CI pipelines where I can release like the backend code and the client-side code independently of each other in order to just be able to ship things faster, right? So I release the backend code that now changes the data model, and I press our CI pipeline. We use GitLab. If you check out GitLab if you're not familiar with it, it's a really great tool for CI work. And something goes wrong. Something just messes up and so forth, and I can't get it to work. And I investigate, I have a look at it, and time kind of goes on. And all the while I'm working with this, I finally get it working right, and I finally release it. And when I finally release it, I realize something. The core, the backend code that I released earlier had breaking changes for the old version of the interface that my coworkers have been using, but nobody has complained. And the reason why nobody has complained is because the code that is written for their web interface is using the practice that I am describing. It's simply the JavaScript that they have, or the JavaScript application that we built, simply deals with the situation. The model changed. Like in most JavaScript applications, that would actually break the entire page, because now you're doing an undefined index somewhere in your rendering logic. We're using React, and that would break the whole thing. But it doesn't, because we use defensive programming. In other words, my coworkers, although the feature that I was working on, the bug fix, was still there, the bug was technically still there, it didn't really matter. They could keep on working because it didn't break the interface. Had I not done as I said, had I not been defensive when I wrote my JavaScript, it would have broken, and they would have been hindered, like they wouldn't have been able to keep on working. But now it was fine now because of this practice, as I said. So take it from me, guys. I'm not saying that you should never throw errors or anything like that. But in my experience, when it comes to JavaScript, never trust what is coming from the server. Always map it over. And if you don't have if it's not there, if the value isn't there, just add a default. An empty list, a default number, a default string, something that just indicates to the user that is looking at your interface that, hey, something isn't right here. Because my coworkers, I talked to them, they understood that, oh yeah, that label, because it was just a piece of text that was going to be shown to them. That was it. And they understood that, oh, there's undefined something, that default text here. They just understood that, okay, that value isn't there right now. Maybe the devs are working on it. And we were. But we didn't have to drop everything to fix something that could have broken the whole application for them. So those are my 2 cents on this. It was very nice to have this happen. I mean, it's not fun when your CI doesn't work, but it was very fun to get like a concrete example of when defensive programming actually was very useful, because of most of the time you don't really, like, it just works. It just keeps on working. And you get a bug once in a while saying that, oh, there's a missing value here, the shape of the data changed. And this was one such occasion. So defensive programming, guys, have a look at it. It's very handy, at least in JavaScript land. Have a great day.